Hey y'all, how you doing? Thank you for joining me. This is Bama Law, and we're going to watch today a proper closing argument. This is my second reshoot, so or second shoot, whatever. Thanks for joining me. Let's learn. I thought it would be a good idea, given that the last one was how not to do a closing argument, and may do another one still on the rest of the outline points of when you should object, etc., in a trial. But this time, I found, just happened by happenstance this past week, I think they call it the Rose Petal Murder. I thought it was just one of these colloquial names that gives something, but apparently the guy who did the murder was convicted of the murder. Actually left rose petals all over the scene. So, but the state did I took the state's closing. It doesn't take 2 days. The guy takes less than an hour. And we're going to have it on 1.5 speed or so it shouldn't take even that long. But I thought it was a good example of how to do it, how he tells his story, uses his evidence to color the story, and to point, kind of like getting a beagle on a trail of an animal. And once they get on it, you take them on that trail, and you don't get off of it till you find the animal or the rabbit, whatever you're hunting. You want to take that jury on the rabbit trail too, except you don't want to go off of it. You want to take the trail and find it. And I think this guy does a pretty good job for it, especially in under an hour for a murder trial. It's pretty. I mean, this is about what I would expect. 2 days for just a defense is, granted, there was a bajillion objections by the state prosecutor, but anyway, so this is a good example, and let's get to it. Let's see. There we go. I think that works.
This is a moment where myself and the defense have an opportunity to speak to you directly. It's called our closing statement, our closing argument. All the evidence that you're going to hear in this case, you've already heard it. It's either sitting right here or it's through testimony that you already heard. And so my goal here is just talk a little bit about this.
Remember, that's the only testament. That's the only thing they can bring into the argument is what evidence that they've already heard and has been brought into trial.
Case with you and sort of explain the state's perspective and how we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Zach Hughes did in fact commit the crimes he's alleged to have committed. And I'm going to go through those crimes a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to go briefly through the evidence and explain my perspective on those things. I will give you a bit of a caveat that this is a little bit of a unique case in that you rarely have the defendant testifying and admitting to the entire crime during the trial. So in that respect, my closing argument may be a little different or maybe a little abnormal than our normal way we do things, but I'm going to do my best. I first want to thank you for your service. It's been a long 2 weeks. Y'all have been extremely attentive. You've paid attention. You've listened to the judge. And to be frankly, I couldn't ask for a better jury.
Everybody thanks the jury. Everybody. It's like, it's not even taught. You just do it. I think it's just human nature.
Appreciate your service. On behalf of my co-counsel, Mr. Jake Hoferth, Investigator Jerry Sparkman, and Master Deputy Blake Wolf, we thank you for your service. Now, I told you in my opening statements that once you see and hear all the testimony in this trial, and I did not know that the defendant was going to testify, you're going to find that Zach Hughes, I don't know if you remember what I said, is a cold-blooded killer. And I submit that the state, along with the testimony of Zach Hughes, we did in fact prove all of that beyond a reasonable doubt. Zach Hughes is a cold-blooded killer. Zach Hughes is an admitted cold-blooded killer.
Yes.
And keep in mind,
that's bad.
He solved John Mello's problems.
That's bad.
So the judge is going to instruct you on the law, and just as we're going to abide by his rulings, you must abide by his instructions. Remember, I told you he's the referee, calls balls and strikes, and he also tells us what the rules are, what the law is. Y'all took an oath way long ago than you probably remember back in last week on.
One note on this is that all of the juror instructions on what the law is, etc., that's already been decided. They've already done that prior to coming into trial. At very least, day before, they've gotten the jury instructions to the judge, and the judge has decided which ones to use, so they know what's going to be said. So this objecting to what jury instructions used, or when they start going over what the law is or what the elements are of a crime. It's never usually a thing. I mean, do we like to do it? It just depends. I mean, I tend to just go over the basics with a jury. That's what 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 the jury's required to do, and what their job is, and then go over again the story, again the facts. I don't necessarily. I've done it. I try not to get into because they're going to get the jury instruction. They're going to get all of it. They're going to get it.
On Monday, a week ago, and you said you would take an oath, you would adhere to his instructions, you would do your duty as jurors, and I have no doubt in my mind that you will absolutely do that. Now, before Zach Hughes admitted to the murder of Christina Parcell, the state called approximately 32 witnesses. We submitted close to 200 exhibits. If you put all this on a hard drive, it's a little over 4 terabytes of information. And all of that taken together, it's a lot of evidence to digest. Now, with the admission of Zach Hughes to a lot of the state's case, the questions you were presented with at the beginning of the case really are answered. Regardless of what he may believe in his head, his actions are what matter in this courtroom. Actions speak louder than words. And boy, do we have a lot of cold, calculated, horrific actions in this case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you must find the facts.
And remember, he's right. They don't have to prove. The only thing that matters is the actions. Yes, you have to have the mens rea to commit the crime. That's proof when you stab someone 35 times. This guy stabbed the woman 35 times, cut her carotid and jugular. He's done the act. He's got the mens rea to complete the act because he killed her. So all he's got to prove is that, he doesn't have to prove anything anymore. The guy's admitted it on the stand. It's the admission that's the weird part. This defendant, and I'll cover it in the next one, but he actually blames the victim. And essentially because she's a hoe. That's the guy's argument, that he was saving the kid. So, with that said, all he's got to prove is the actual. He's got to prove the act, and that there was mens rea for it, and that's not hard. All you got to do is prove that he meant to kill her when he stabbed her 35 times. That's easy. 35 once, maybe not. Well, maybe they got an argument, and a knife came out, and in the heat of the moment, boom. And then you have a lesser charge of manslaughter. Maybe they're arguing outside and he punches her once and she dies of a head injury. Manslaughter. 35 times?
Facts based on the evidence in this trial and solely based on the evidence presented at this trial inside this courtroom. It is undisputed that Zach Hughes planned, he lay and waited, he broke into Christina Parcell's home with a .22 and a knife, some roses. She had just returned home from her last interview with vet tech. Zach Hughes, a person she had never met. She had never met him. Beat her with a gun, brutally stabbed her 35 times, severing her jugular vein and her carotid artery. Now, as we go through the evidence and we look at some of the different things, I'm going to ask you to keep in mind the charges that you're actually looking at. So the first charge I'm explaining is the harassment charge. And there's 2 harassment. There's harassment and there's conspiracy to commit harassment. The only difference is that conspiracy requires 2 or more people joining in to commit the harassment. So harassment is just a pattern of intentional, substantial, and unreasonable intrusion into the private life of a targeted person that serves no legitimate purpose and would cause a reasonable person in his position to suffer mental or emotional distress.
He doesn't even really have to go over this. He could just go straight over the facts of the case. That's it. And then let the jury be charged and, let them go back. Because a lot of people like to go over what the actual charge is individually. Hey, this is what we're charged. Dude, we've been here for 2 weeks. They know what the charges are. And they're going to get charged again by the judge. So I probably would have cut this part out. That's just me.
That's related to all those photos and those documents that you saw mailed out. I think there's 7 envelopes full of photos and other documents. You heard testimony about what was in those. Some of them are in evidence. Some were just described because those were pictures of Christina Parcell without any clothes on. So we didn't introduce those so as not to embarrass her or her family. Burglary first. A person is guilty of burglary first if he enters a dwelling without consent and with the intent to commit a crime. And I remind you, the judge is going to tell you the law is, what it is. I'm just trying to give you an outline so you can keep that in mind as we're going through this evidence. And they enter without consent and armed with a deadly weapon or cause physical injury. Well, those things all already appear in this case. Zach Hughes went in under a ruse of roses, according to his own testimony, but he went in directly with the intent to commit harm, and he had weapons on him. And then you've got murder. You also have possession of the weapon during the commission of a violent crime. That is, if you use a weapon and you murder somebody, that is the possession of the weapon during that commission of a violent crime. But you have murder, which is the killing of any person with malice aforethought. Malice aforethought. You're going to hear those words a lot in the judge's instructions. But malice is ill will towards another person, the intentional doing of a wrong act with the intent to inflict injury. And I think I said early on, ladies and gentlemen, it was a depraved heart, an angry heart, the intent to harm somebody. And there's also express malice, meaning it's expressed, it's right there in front of you. And it's shown when there are words of hatred or when someone prepares to do the act. They prepare to go in there. It's called premeditation, is what you'll hear the judge charge you. Premeditation is preparing to go and harm somebody, like lying in wait, like buying weapons beforehand, by concealing your identity, going in there. Those kinds of things are premeditation, things that you do in preparation of the violent act. And if you find those things, and you find the state proved those beyond a reasonable doubt, then you can find the defendant guilty. So before we get in, let's start with a little background now. You know the players, you know everybody involved in here, you know the victim. You've heard a lot about the victim, Christina Parcell. You've heard a lot about John Mello, you've heard a lot about Zach Hughes, and you've heard a lot about Christina Parcell and John Mello's daughter. So the background, and we're talking the time frame from 2020, October 2020-ish, to October 13th, 2021. So we're roughly a time span of 1 year. And what happens throughout that year that leads up to the murder of Christina Parcell? Zach Hughes never talked to Christina Parcell. He didn't know Christina Parcell. He never met Christina Parcell. Everything he knew about Christina Parcell, even according to his own testimony, was told to him by John Mello or shown to him in certain evidence. John Mello was in a nasty custody battle with Christina Parcell. We all know that. He was on his 4th round of custody disputes with Christina Parcell. Keep in mind, according to the Guardian ad litem, the prior 3 were just as nasty, but they'd always been settled where John Mello would have significant custody of their daughter.
Just so everybody knows, he said Guardian ad litem. Guardian ad litem. I used to be one. It's Guardian and the word AD space LITEM. It's essentially an attorney for their child, usually in a custody battle or any type of court case where a child has got an interest or may have a legal interest. They really turn out to be usually just the eyes and ears for a judge when they shouldn't be. You're not supposed to do ex parte communications, etc. But 9 out of 10 times, judge, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Shouldn't matter what I think. I'm just going to argue for the kid either way. But that's not how it usually works.
But in April of 2021, that changed. The tide changed for John Mello because he took Aida out of the country in violation of that order, according to the Italian courts. And he took her to Italy. And Christina Parcell didn't even know about that until she saw a social media post where she realizes my daughter's out of the country. I can't see her or talk to her, and she's with her father. Thus, the continuation of this nasty child custody dispute. And then from October to April, Aida was living in Italy with little or no contact with Christina. So what did Christina do? She did what any mother would do, is she tried to get the return of her daughter. So she went through this process. It was explained by Christina's sister, Tina Parcell, as well as the guardian ad litem, Vanessa Carmelo. She filed under what's called the Hague Convention, and she asked to have her daughter returned to her. She actually flew to Italy twice to have these hearings in Italy.
Wow.
And she was successful. She won that particular battle in this myriad of battles of child custody that have been going on between these 2 individuals. And so in April of 2021, that really set off John Mello. He was unhappy. And we know the things, and we're going to talk about the things that he did starting that day, through the WhatsApps, through the harassment letters, everything else, to solve that custody dispute problem. And that's where this case really, really began. That is when things turned not in favor of Christina Parcell.
Okay, he could have cut all that out. I mean, he could have just said it started in a custody battle, but maybe there's some more tie-in. Maybe there's more of a tie-in in it than it seems. But could have just said, what started this was the subject of a severe, horrible custody battle that ended across the Atlantic, in the Mediterranean, near the depending on what part of Italy, the Adriatic, and came in and ended up coming back to South Carolina, and he could have done something like that, and shortened it. But it's been great.
So, what is the relationship between Zach Hughes and John Mello? All right. So, where did they all come into this mass of characters? Well, according to Zach, he met John on the streets of Greenville about August of 2020.
Don't ever go there. I can't believe you just said that. If you go to Greenville, they'll tell you it's Greenville, not Greenville, Greenville. What does this guy go for? 30 minutes. That's it. That's a good closing. That's good. Because he gets the whole story in a succinct, boom, he's done. And the jury's charged and goes back to deliberate. None of this 2-3 day crap. And then 2 to 3 days for the defense. Because I know the defense only takes about 30 minutes. That's good. Because the jury's, everything's fresh in their head. This, or what we saw with ASAP Rocky was just, it was ludicrous.
And he was with Aida, and Zach played a very likable classical music piece that John Mello and Aida liked. And that's how they met. So they met that one time. That was one of the few times that Zach Hughes actually met Aida Mello. And he talked about, they went on about 4 or 5, maybe 6 occasions where they were hanging out. They got some tacos one night. They saw a museum. But Aida Mello didn't know Zach Hughes. She didn't know who he was. She's a 9-year-old little girl who heard him play a piano piece, who's a friend of her dad's. And that's all the time they ever spent together. That's it. In August until October, John Mello left for Italy. And with him went Aida. So Zach Hughes never spent any more time with Aida, what little time he did during that small time, ever, never again. Now, he may have seen her on a FaceTime while he's talking to her dad. You may have seen her or seen videos of that, which he testified to. But Zach acted on this stand as if he could see into her soul. He could see into her eyes. He knew how she was feeling. He could tell that she gained weight and why she gained weight at a certain particular time in her life, in her adolescent life. He is drawing those conclusions on a little bit of information and nothing but whatever John Mello is feeding him. So what's their first thing? Aida's back with her mother. She, in May, begins living at Canebrake with her aunt, Tina Parcell, and that's where they're living there. John Mello's in Italy, and Zach Hughes and John Mello decide, well, you know what we're going to do? Let's embarrass Christina Parcell. Let's make her life look bad. Let's make her look like a prostitute. That'll help me get custody of her. That'll help me with the guardian ad litem.
Whoa.
And so John Mello, according to Detective Bevel, who testified, had photos, and according to the evidence right here, he had photos of Christina Parcell. And those photos were taken when she was much younger. And those photos are taken between 2 consensual adults engaging in what acts that 2 consensual adults can do. And that's it. And then he took those photos and he used them as a weapon. And he tried to make her look like a prostitute. Because that's what John Mello continually told Zach Hughes, according to his own testimony, Alex Field's affidavit.
Wow.
Let's make her look like a prostitute, and let's send them around to a neighborhood. Well, they sent them to a neighborhood where Brad Post lived. They didn't even send them to Canebrake. And we know this because in these WhatsApps, they talk about it specifically. They talk about.
So he's going over this for the specific. It's not because of the murder per se. It's because they've got a harassment charge. So I'm guessing this is going to be the harassment. Damn, that guy's stacked. Bruh. Whoa. Man. Hate to mess with him.
May I present to you my daughter's mother, Christina, Caroline Warren, escort. And we know there's a bunch of attachments that we can't see because Zach Hughes deleted these on October 13th. And when we retrieve them from WhatsApp, they're deleted. So you have to see us, investigators department, manipulating these WhatsApps. And then they sent them that way. And then Zach Hughes receives them. He gets them. And he sees an email that was sent to him as well. This email is very important. And he prepares all these packages to Brad Post, to Mr. Bradley Post. These are all his PO box. Brad Post, cigar bar, where Brad Post hangs out. Misspells Mr. Post one time in the WhatsApps. Misspells it here, P-O-A-S-T, which is why we know it. But Zach Hughes admitted it. But this email here purports to come from Mullen Investigations at protonmail.com. And it's cut out. And you've got this photo of Christina Parcell. You've got another photo of Christina Parcell back there, which is the same ones that are in here. But there's no URL with Bella Dongion right here. And this is the escort site. And it says Caroline Warren. She became a member, Caroline Warren, in 2009. Well, this is 2021. And apparently this Mullen Investigations on May 16th found these photos attached to this website. Except the photos don't have anything attached to the website. It's just a square of an escort site of Caroline Warren. I don't know who that is. I know this. I know Caroline Warren. I know Mullen Investigations. John Mello. Vanessa Carmelo testified to it. She received emails from Mullen Investigations. She received lots of emails from people purporting to be John Mello. So,
wow, okay.
Zach Hughes went to the trouble.
There's your harassment.
Of preparing all these envelopes, manipulating all the items, the photos, the escort, and putting it together. And he wanted to make sure we knew it was her. And so we would add a cover letter. You can see the cover letter that he would do.
As if the other wasn't enough.
He had to add a cover letter, make sure you knew exactly who that was. That it was Christina Parcell that was engaging in prostitution. And he sent them out to shame her, to make fun of her. There's WhatsApps in there saying, we're going to ruin her day. And Zach Hughes did it the same way he committed this murder. He used his bike, he avoided cameras.
Of all the clients I've had for domestic law, I've never had one that has done something or had something like that done to them. Revenge porn. Yeah, wow. Not. I mean, this guy all literally, but that went out and got the old Eddie Murphy clip of "You too can be a hoe for $9.95." Velvet Jones, I don't want to be a hoe. Literally, I mean, that's the only thing that's lacking. That's, I mean, that's what he's making her to be, is a whore. That's it's intense.
Tried to find a location, and he didn't know that we could track his phone. So we know he was in Greenville when he mailed those in June and July. And he was in Tennessee when the other two were mailed. So we know he did all that. But the big point of the harassment is not that that's bad to do somebody. It's really what Tina Parcell referred to as revenge porn. South Carolina does not have a statute for revenge porn. We have harassment. And that's exactly what that is. But he's really doing it, one, to make her look bad, to make her look like a prostitute. But he's also trying to do it to gain a strategic advantage in this custody battle. And it doesn't work. He even sends one to the Guardian ad litem. What does the Guardian ad litem do? She investigates everything. But Rapo's put a lot of work. I mean, Zach Hughes put a lot of work.
Regular and
a lot of work finding all those envelopes to somebody he doesn't even know. He's never met, never talked to. Now, John Mello, I would say he's pretty much a liar. He dated Christina back in 05 and 06 and had their daughter in 2012. And of course, this custody battle.
You notice he didn't say, he said he's pretty much a liar. It's borderline. Lewin would have, objection, improper statement, improper argument. You know, he came close. He came close to saying, "This guy's a liar. I think this guy's a liar. You can't believe anything he says." He doesn't. He just says this guy is a liar. Yeah. It's borderline. He probably should have said something like, "You've heard his testimony. Is it believable? We don't think you'll find it believable." That way, you're not making it a personal attachment. It's just interesting that, again, no objection. What's the point?
And if you want to look about the character and who John Mello is, I refer you back to Vanessa Cornelow's testimony. She testified that John Mello would do horrific things in relation to this custody battle. To her, to a lawyer who's representing a little girl as a guardian ad litem who's practicing law for 26 years, he would accuse her of horrific things, according to her. He would accuse her of trafficking children in Spartanburg. He would post things on social media ridiculing her. And that's how John Mello operated. That's how he operated. He used deceit by using fake emails. He used threats to try to get what he wanted. Mullen investigation. He sent those to Vanessa Cornellow. He sent an email pertaining to be a lawyer named Sophia Carlucci, according to Vanessa Cornellow. And she knew it was John Mello writing it because she's read so many emails from him, they matched up. So he's trying to gain a strategic advantage. John Mello and Zach Hughes were trying to harm Christina because John Mello had a custody problem. And the only way to solve it was murder. So Zach visits John for 3 weeks in June in Italy. So he met him for 5 times between October.
It's a little odd. I'm kind of surprised South Carolina doesn't have a statute for revenge porn. I get it. It's just the harassment kind of covers it. Punishment would probably be the same. In Alabama, we did get one right as I was going from private practice and working for a state doing defense work. And it's Alabama Code 9075 13A 6240. It's illegal to knowingly distribute. It's a dissemination of or to disseminate a private image of a person without their consent when that person has a reasonable expectation of privacy. So it applies to like essentially harassment, but it just has a digital connotation to it. Whether by email, text, or online, is intended to prevent the use of such images to harass, threaten, coerce, or intimidate. So it's the same language as harassment. But for the first offense, it's a Class A misdemeanor. That's the highest you can get in Alabama. That's 1 year. It's 365 days or less in jail. Jail, not prison. Jail. Can't go to prison for that. Can't go to DFC. If you do it again, it's Class C felony. That's 366 days. Year and a day. So we don't worry about the leap year. Usually they'll say, because even then that's still a year. Has to be a year or more. Thought I'd share that little tidbit. I am surprised they don't have that. But hey, it works. They don't need it. They can use harassment. Does the same thing.
For August and October 2020, they're having lots of conversations on the WhatsApp, and he's in 3 weeks in June in Italy. And it was a pretty important moment when Zach Hughes said, John Mello offered me $5,000 to kill Christina Parcell. John Mello offered me $10,000 to kill Christina Parcell. Now, of course, Zach said he wouldn't take that money. He would just do it for free. Because killing Christina Parcell is the right thing to do.
Whoa.
So that's when the plot to murder Christina Parcell began. That's kind of when this evolved. And I think they started with the photos, which were in June and July, but that wasn't going to carry weight with anything. Interesting that a struggling pianist turned down $10,000. Do it for free. Especially of a person he's never met on behalf of a little girl he barely knows. Now, much of what Zach Hughes said, I believe, on that stand was true. I think a lot of it was a bunch of self-serving, narcissistic junk. Zach Hughes is trying to portray himself on that stand as a hero instead of the cold-blooded killer.
I guess ADA Lewin could object on that one and say, "Hey, you're making this a personal belief in whether or not he's credible, rather than just pointing out." Again, what's the point? What's the point of the objection? It's not going to do anything. You're just going to piss the jury off, especially when you do it 30 times.
Killer that he is. Ladies and gentlemen, we judge the defendant by their actions, not by their excuses or their words. Actions speak much louder than any self-serving lies from a sadistic, pathological killer like Zach Hughes. He murdered Christina Parcell, mother to Aida, sister to Tina Parcell, and daughter to Erica and Tim Parcell. Now, I talked a lot about Vanessa Cormelo because she's a key witness, because that is the dispute that we're having, the custody battle. And she's in charge of making recommendations about who should get custody. Her job is to investigate the custodians. She stated that she investigated every allegation, which were at Christina, which was involved in prostitution and drugs. She stated she would investigate every allegation, hire private investigators, put trackers on cars, meet with potential custodians, have home visits, and talk with the child constantly. So she's doing everything that she can possibly do. She even had allegations like Alex Fields. There's an affidavit that the defense submitted on Alex Fields, where he says that he was propositioned by Christina Parcell for sex and offered to sell him drugs. And he put in an affidavit. This was after John Mello put on Craigslist, "Do you have any information about Christina Parcell that I know about? I'd like to know anything about who responds to a Craigslist ad about somebody." And then sets an example of what they did at a bar. And for what purpose? Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not true. I have no idea. That's what Alex Field says. It really doesn't matter. While the defense wants to impugn the integrity of Christina Parcell as a justification for committing murder, so be it. If doing bad things means anyone can break into my house and stab me 35 times without retribution, then two things will happen. There'll be a lot of people stabbed to death, and I'll be out of a job, because all we'll have is vigilante justice in our system. But again, these are allegations that John Mello is making. He's looking for any dirt on Christina Parcell. Again, these are all allegations. Well, let's come to October. Vanessa Cormelo was getting close to making her decision. Who's going to get custody? Her investigation revealed that before Christina's murder, she would write a favorable report for Christina Parcell and a bad one. That's what Vanessa Cormelo said. In addition, it was almost 6 months since Aida had come home, and that's important. 6 months. Someone can file to terminate the parental rights of another. We were about to be 6 months. Zach Hughes said October was the time he felt it was the time to kill her. Just felt it in his heart and his mind. He tried on the 12th, did it on the 13th. That is important because it was getting close. John Mello was getting a bad report, and things aren't going to go his way, so he's got a problem. Now, if Christina Parcell is no longer around, he's the last man standing. He's going to get custody. So Zach admittedly decides to murder Christina Parcell. That was his intent. He bought a gun and a knife about a month before. It was weighing on his soul. His custody dispute's not going well. And so he entered into a lot of planning going into this murder, a ton of planning. And the state presented all of this evidence to you before he testified. But we know that Zach Hughes on the 12th was up at the Mountain House because his phone showed that he was up there. And while up there, he had his truck. And we know he put his bike in the back of the truck. We know he parked it somewhere. And we know that he decided to park somewhere in the game break and ride his bike in there. And we didn't know, but we know that he knew the schedule of Christina Parcell that day because he said John Mello told him. So he gets in his truck, and I would submit he arrives around 7:42-ish to somewhere wherever he parked. We never learned exactly where he parked near game break, but we know he parked somewhere there, and he rode his bike. Because at 7:42, we know from his phone that he plugs it in. That's the last activity on his phone at that time. So he parks, he plans, he thinks, he gets on his bike, and he drives in. And we know he drives in because he passes Donna Gorman's house. And Donna Gorman was an early witness from the state. And she did an identification of Zach Hughes from that witness stand. The state was not expecting that. We had never shown her a photo lineup. We'd shown her a photo of the bike, of Zach on the bike from the ring cameras. But she had never seen Zach in person. And so we just left it. Now, we did wait until about 3 years after the murder before Donna Gorman told us that information. That is true. Riley Stokes talked to her that day, and he didn't have a copy of it. Master Deputy Wolf talked to her on the 19th, and he didn't show her a copy of the person on the bike. And so there was so much chaos going on, so many officers moving in so many directions, trying to find the evidence to solve this murder. It was just overlooked. And so when we went and talked to her, this was her testimony. And that's what we presented to this jury. She was right. She was right. The DNA proved it. Zach Hughes proved it. So Donna Gorman sees him, and she says it's around 8:15-ish when he goes by. And then he goes to Christina Parcell's house. And my opinion is that he went and he hid under the bottom of the house. His testimony was different. He says different. He says that he got there and went straight in, dropped his bike, and went to the front door. We have a difference. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe I'm wrong. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I submit that he went and he waited. He had an hour to wait. Of course, he had an hour drive from the Mountain House all the way to Canebrake. You know what he could have done? He could have turned around. He could have done anything he wanted. He could have gone to the QT. He could have changed his mind. He had many opportunities to do that. He was committed. And so he went and he lied and he waited. And he waited for a time because he knew her schedule and he knew her car. He knew her address. It's in evidence. And he went and decided to walk in the front door with roses as a ruse, according to his testimony, with a gun and a knife and a backpack, paint thinner so he could clean up afterwards. And he kills her. So let's see the moments before Christina Parcell is murdered. Zach Hughes, dressed as he said he was, gray sweatshirt, backpack, black pants, walks directly into that house. I can't see if he's carrying flowers. I know he was. I know he had flowers on him. And he walks in, and he surprises Christina Parcell. Points a gun at her, hits her in the head with a gun. And then he stabs, and he begins to stab, and he begins to slash, and he begins to slash, and he begins to stab, and slash. Now think of the force needed to stab someone in the chest, stab them in the back, all over the head. And finally, through all the fighting and the stabbing and the pushing, while Christina is fighting for her life, he finds the vulnerable spots, stabs her in the jugular and the carotid artery, causing her to bleed out. With blunt force trauma to the head, she has to be on the ground. Blood is everywhere, pulling around her dropped phone in the couch. But that's not enough. He drags her through her own blood to cover up the crime as he closes the curtains and locks the front door so he's not detected. As droplets of blood fall from his blood-soaked clothes. She remains laying on that floor in her own blood, with nothing but her blood-soaked scrubs and her wedding band that Brad Post gave her. But his sadistic actions are not over. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, those rose petals had a dual purpose. He may have used them as a ruse to get in and get inside the house so he could surprise Christina and gain that strategic advantage, murder her. But he also sprinkled them around. He sprinkled them around the house, on her purse, around, as some sort of sadistic, artistic sign that he thought was necessary. And then, he had to keep in line with the allegations: prostitution and drugs. Put a bag of cocaine under a couch, under a chair, right down from her body. Killing her wasn't enough. Shaming her was the goal, too. This was not to save Aida. This was to help John Mello win his custody case. He never told us about the drugs either. Never mentioned those. So then the cover up. So then, after you effectuate the crime, you commit it, then you got to clean up. You got to cover up. So you first had to cover up the scene. You had to worry about that DNA under her fingers. That DNA is key to this case. Had to wipe her fingers down with that paint thinner. He did not want to get caught. Pre-planned, and then really good exit strategy, cover up. He went back to the mountain house. Of course, we know he's there because his phone puts him there around 1:17. He connects to the Wind Wi-Fi. The Wind's out of the mountain house. He has access to it. Remember, it's real remote. I think Master Deputy Wool said it's so remote you can walk around naked. Nobody would see you. Perfect place to clean up a crime scene like that. Can you imagine how soaked in blood his clothes were? Can you imagine how soaked in blood his car was? Can you imagine how soaked in blood his bike was? And he did. And he admitted it. Burned his clothes, ditched the knife and the gun in some pond, cleaned up everything, and he went back to Tyndall about his daily life. And that's what he said. I've mentioned Zacchaeus' testimony a lot. And I'm sorry that you had the unfortunate privilege of hearing the specific testimony of the killing of Christina Parcell by a cold-blooded, cold stone-faced killer, trying to portray himself as a hero instead of the cold-blooded, calculating killer that he actually is. Only a person with a severely diminished sense of heroism, with a heart that is cold as ice, can portray that. The absurdity of many of his words. And I'll reference a couple. I wanted to make her death quick and painless. This is what he said. When I was listening to that, it was hard for me to comprehend that someone is actually saying that at their trial to a jury. Do we say thank you? I appreciate it. Thank you for taking my pain into consideration as you murder me? What does that even mean? Well, I'll ask you this. Was it quick and painless when he hit her in the head with a gun? Was it quick and painless when he stabbed her the first time? Was it quick and painless when he stabbed her the second time? How about the 5th, the 10th, maybe the 20th? He was being consider it. Maybe the 30th. How about the final 35th blow? And then, of course, I asked him one question. How'd you drag your body across the room? He said, I don't really recall, but I think it was by her ankles. He looked me in the eyes in a stone cold faced way, told me the answer. He was proud of it. He said, I do not want anyone else to be involved. I waited till everyone was gone. Thanks. Appreciate that. Talking like he's doing us a favor. I wonder what would happen if a neighbor did come over. I wonder what would happen if Brad Post had showed up. I wonder what would happen if Tina Parcell had showed up. Would it be a double homicide so we could escape and escape detection? And of course, he was so calculated, he got her schedule that day from John Mello. And then he said, I didn't want to get caught because they would connect me to John Mello. Oh, okay. So if you didn't get caught, you solved the custody problem. But if I did get caught, then I didn't solve the custody problem because then they would connect me to John Mello and he wouldn't get custody. Then he comes in here, testifies, connects John Mello. Doesn't make any sense. Now, he talked a good bit about his background. My understanding, he's a fantastic pianist, highly trained. But he went through his resume with an ego, letting you all know how great he really was, military service. Playing these really difficult sonatas by Beethoven. I'm going to play all 16, never been done. But he describes his sister Grace in great detail as well for some reason. He said she was a horrific person when confronted with irrefutable evidence. She would go cold, stone-faced. She would manipulate and recruit others to do a terrible deed. If you trust Grace, you're only going to get hurt again. She was a vampire and would suck the blood right out of you.
Okay, all right. What does that have to do with the case?
He described himself.
What does that got to do with? Okay, stop. What in the hell does that got to do with the case? That could have been objected to. That literally had nothing to do with the case. Just what he thought of his, I think he said sister and her race. That's borderline there. But again, this guy's already sank his boat. So he might as well throw some jabs.
He said, I feel pity for her. He felt pity for Christina Parcell? How was that even possible of a human being? His heart is so mean, so depraved, that he viewed someone he'd never met and discussed the specific details of killing her, treating her like she was an elderly dog being sent to the vet to be euthanized. It doesn't get any meaner than that. Christina Parcell didn't have to die. Zach Hughes had a million opportunities to not do this. And if he did it to save Aida, there's a million ways to handle that. Vigilante justice is not allowed in this state. Vigilante justice isn't allowed anywhere. Regardless of what Zach Hughes had in his mind or what he thinks he had into his heart, he's lying to himself. Because all he had was hate and meanness, coldness. He brutally murdered Christina Parcell. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long 2 weeks. I thank you for your service. And I thank you for listening to me.
And please give me
the evidence is absolutely
please give me a verdict of guilty.
I'm going to ask you to go back there and deliberate. I'm going to ask you to find Zach Hughes guilty of harassment.
Yeah, we're good. All right, so that's how you do it. That is the best one I have seen in a while. Told the story, got his points across, got his points of law across, and did it in under an hour for a 2-week murder trial. Not 2 days from closing, 45 minutes. This is how you do it. All right, thanks. Hit like, subscribe, leave a comment. Appreciate it. Hope y'all enjoy. Next time I think we'll do the defense, because and then I'll go over the rest of my outline about objections and kill two birds with it. But I think you'll be really interested in what the defense is. Wow, their closing argument. It's wow. I think we'll do that. All right. Thanks, y'all. Hit like and subscribe, please. Thank you. Bye.